5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider, Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTKA.com. MGoBlog Roundtable time is Sam Webb here with Ira Weintraub and the MGoBlog Roundtable crew, starting with Brian Cook, BC. How you doing?
Good.
Good to see you, my man. And of course, fresh off of a trip to Indy, Craig Ross. How are you?
Doing great. You always complain how old I am, but you call Brian Cook BC. That's all I'm saying.
And then, of course, Seth Fisher. Seth, how are you this morning?
Top of the world, man. Top of the world.
All right, and I don't complain about how old you are. I make reference
I
to
know.
I complain.
You complain.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, hey,
I marvel.
no complaints, fellas. And zero complaints about the Big Ten champion Wolverines. I know there was some thought that maybe there would be the hangover effect after you beat down Ohio State. You made them quit. You made them tap out, right? That what could be better than Ohio State crying about how sick they were in the game, and that's the reason they lost. Nothing gets better than that. But Michigan, they go out, they compartmentalize, they put that game behind them, and fellas, they won that game in a fashion that few outside of Ann Arbor thought they could. I know initially I thought it would be a tighter game. By the time we got the game time and hearing from everyone on the inside, it's like, oh, they're going to blow them out 35-10. They were even better than that, Brian. 42-3. I don't know who saw that coming.
Well, I think everybody saw it coming after the first quarter. Well, I mean, you go into this game and you're like, this is one of the worst offenses in the country. And for them to be 10-2 is miraculous. And you go look at their individual games and they're like winning games by gaining 170 yards. So what are they going to do when they have to go up against Aiden Hutchinson? And it turns out that they don't have the ability to run a bunch of college crap like a Rutgers or a Nebraska because they're coached by Brian Ferentz. And as soon as Michigan downloaded
Ferentz, actually,
Brian Ferentz is the OC.
offense, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so they had the waggle stuff going in the first half, and as soon as Michigan adjusted to that, like first play of the second half, it was over. Like they had nothing else. So
yeah, I mean, in the first half, that really was about all they had were the waggles, and otherwise they tried to get the ball out extremely quickly to avoid the problems that Hutchinson and Ojabo cause. And so the ball got out very quickly, and the quarterback just really didn't have the ability to do that, nor were their receivers creating much separation. So they resorted to, wide zone / waggle, and it worked a bit, but when they got into the red zone, they were cooked, and when they got into the second half, they were really gone in terms of their ability to do anything on offense.
Yeah, they had that 3rd and 5 from the 5. So 3rd and goal from the 5.
Yeah.
They were on a 2-man route. They leave in 8 guys to protect,
Right.
and then it's just like, can this guy win one-on-one against DJ Turner? And the answer is no. So that was all they had, was just pray that one of your receivers can make a play. After Michigan did a really good job against Ohio State's receivers last week, that was just never going to work.
Yeah, man. I thought the game was probably over when they come down the field, Seth. They have a play. I mean, they got a play in the end zone. Touchdown, right? They don't get that. Then field goal. They missed that. And then Michigan comes out and boom, touchdown, 14-point swing. It's like that kind of gut punch. There's just no way this team is going to get up off the mat.
Yeah, I mean the way that game started, and the fact that Michigan got 3 huge plays in a row, actually, on offense, sandwiched with that, Iowa just missing their own running back throw. I mean, that was huge because Iowa's entire way of winning this game was to Iowa up the game, and they Iowa upped a huge part of this game, right? There was like one throw to Eric All that was a little bit behind him, and then like it just miraculously ends up in the linebacker's hands. That is Iowa. That's how Iowa gets you. And then like Michigan keeps on fielding punts at the 7 and 3 yard line, and you can't really run your offense when you're in the shadow of your own goalpost. And so, Michigan just backed up all the time. That is how you Iowa someone to death, and that's how Iowa wins their football games. So Michigan breaking through early and getting those points up. I thought once it was a 2-score lead, I'm like, Iowa, there's no way Iowa's going to have to make some incredible plays. They had one scripted drive, and after that, just nothing. And Brian made the point on the podcast about like we're upset that if they were only going to score 3 points, that they did it in a way that did not maximize Aiden Hutchinson's stats.
Yeah, I mean, like they weren't going to win this game, so they can at least win someone a Heisman. Let's think of the broader picture, Iowa.
See now, you look at stats for Heisman's, right? But I thought that there was a Heisman moment in this game, just like the Thayer Mumford play. I don't know what the right tackle for Iowa, what his name is, but he got Thayer Mumford in this game. It was worse because this dude laid sprawled out on the field. I don't know if you guys remember the play.
Yes,
but it was. I saw it from the press box. He just murdered another offensive tackle. It's uncanny. He is the most dominant lineman, in my opinion, in college football. We'll talk about this more as we get into the Georgia preview. But again, he shows up in this game, and just you just felt like there was no hope for an offense that they have been terrible for the most part all season long, buoyed by a defense and special teams that give them extra chances. So you get in the second half of this game when Michigan, when they get a stop and they go down the field and get a score, just like Ohio State, right? Game's over right there.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, 21-3 was it. And like, if we can go back to the first half, that back-to-back big play thing, I think is sort of a crowning achievement for Josh Gaddis this year. So they bring in McCarthy. McCarthy draws a lot of attention, and then Corum's able to make a move in the secondary to get loose. And then the play after that, back-to-back, going for the jugular, is Donovan Edwards with the halfback pass. And then the play after that is a 38-yard chunk where A.J. Henning is on an end around and everybody else gets lost because the action's going the other way. So those were the first 30-yard runs Iowa had given up this year. And that was the longest pass they had given up. So bang, bang, bang. If we don't have an ultimate Iowa moment on that delay route, Michigan's probably going in and scoring. I know Devin was talking about how their post was open on that too. So if get a little bit more confidence from the quarterback on that play, it's bang, 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 4 in a row, and it's 21-3, and this is ugly and out of hand immediately.
I wonder what you guys thought about this. I mean, you had those 3 plays that totaled, I think, about almost 180 yards back to back to back. But I also felt like the quarterback play was a little bit sloppy in the first half. The second half was fine. PFF loved Cade's play in this game, but I thought he missed a couple of guys. I mean, what did Devin think?
Well, Devin all year has been like, these guys are open downfield. You need to throw it.
Yeah,
all year. Like every time I listen to a part of the show, it looks like Devin's like, this guy's open. This guy's open. This guy's open.
Mm-hmm.
Throw the ball. So there was more of that in this game, but maybe that's just not who McNamara is, and that's why he's got 3 interceptions on the year. That's why he's a game manager. Now, I don't know if game managing is going to be enough against Georgia, but it sure as hell was against Iowa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was better in the second half, to your point, Craig. And
he played well in the second half, in my opinion.
Yeah, they made some adjustments when it came to handling their pressure. Because, I mean, Iowa, give them credit. At least they didn't quit like Ohio State. They were still trying in the second half of that game. And they're a smart defense. They have some players over there. They just got, right? They were blowing up Michigan's counter. Michigan hits them with a wheel off counter action, right? I mean, they were doing different things with their blitzes to throw Michigan off. And it just wasn't enough. They don't get enough. It's not a complete team. It's not a complete team, and you need a complete team to beat this Michigan team. And how about that? How about saying that? Michigan football, 2-4 team, staff makeover, is Big Ten champ and going to the national playoff. And I feel like you got to say it again to really bring it back to the fore, bring that perspective back to the fore. That the way that they were able to persevere, the way they were allowed to persevere, right? I think all those guys are rightfully taking a bow right now. And you wonder what that's going to mean for 2 things. Number 1, contract for Jim Harbaugh. Number 2, who's leaving, right? Because you know when you have this kind of success, other teams other programs try to come poach. I think the most likely guy would be Gaddis, especially on the heels of a Broyles Award.
Well, the issue with the playoff is no one wants to leave a playoff team, and I think the coaching carousel is going to be done by the time that Gaddis is actually available. So that might be something where you're looking at another year down the road, perhaps, where Michigan isn't in this situation. So like VT is filled now, Virginia's filled. Like a lot of the kind of
they hired him. They hired Tony Elliott.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but at this juncture, I think it would be an upset if it wasn't Tony Elliott. So those kind of jobs where it's like, okay, yeah, we're going to get a coordinator who's pretty good from a Power 5 school. Those seem to be closing. And then, we'll see if anything else opens up. But I think the combination of the early signing period and the playoff stuff is makes it pretty unlikely that Gaddis is going to get a head job this year. And then we'll see if anybody else. These guys are all pretty young, so they might not feel the urge to go somewhere else right away. They might want to build a little bit more of a resume, maybe do a Venables thing where Venables holds out and he gets the Oklahoma job.
Crazy.
That's pretty good.
You're right.
So
yeah, I
think maybe Michigan gets Keon Sabb out the deal. I'll take that.
That's not bad.
You never know what's going to pop open. I was surprised Dave Clawson has not gotten a lot of looks, the Wake Forest head coach. I was imagining going into the season or going into the end of the season here in the coaching carousel that someone was going to look at Dave Clawson because he's done a great job at Wake, and if he goes, that's Gaddis' alma mater, right? That's got to be a slam dunk. Which I'd be fine with because I would go after Dave Clawson's offensive coordinator right away.
Well, I mean, Clawson's done a great job at Wake, but historically Wake is not a place that sends a lot of coaches to other destinations other than the unemployment line. So, I mean, that's a decision you might want to make. I don't know, but that's always I don't know about that.
Yeah. So fellas, let's shift attention to one of the other championships games, I should say, the SEC championship game. Georgia gets out to a 10-0 lead. And then Bama, Bryce Young, he starts to warm up. And they start scoring. And suddenly that Georgia defense is all right, well, we are having some problems stopping these guys. Offense, let's go. We need to trade with these dudes. And they couldn't do it. And I think it was maybe revelatory to the country about how incomplete that team is. Now they aren't Iowa. I'm not accusing them of having a totally inept offense, but dude, this is not your typical Georgia offense. This is not the Georgia offense with Sony Michel and Nicole Hardman out there and Nick Chubb and this is not that crew that Michigan's going to see on Saturday. And how about this statement? I'm curious where you guys fall on it. Say what you want about Michigan at the quarterback position. I think they're in better shape than Georgia.
Well, I mean, Georgia's in an interesting spot because they imported JT Daniels from USC in the offseason, and he plays a couple games, gets hurt, and then Stetson Bennett's been the guy ever since. And, they're scoring 37 points against Arkansas, and Bennett's putting up 72 passing yards. So, when they've gotten against teams that can really play, which hasn't really happened this much, their schedule is not great. Bennett has kind of seemed like an issue. So they win against Clemson 10-3 to start the season off, right? And then they put up 24 against Alabama, and they haven't really seen a defense like either of those teams anywhere between those two. And I feel like
putting up 10 points, that was without an offensive touchdown, by the way.
Right. So I feel like Michigan is going to be able to slow the Georgia offense down. It's just the other side of the ball is concerning because this is, until they get in the Alabama game, one of the best defenses, I think, in the last 10 years of college football. And so I think that's probably real. If you look at the players going up and down the roster, they seem pretty well built to stop Michigan's ground game. They have a Wisconsin level rush defense, and Michigan kind of scuffled against Wisconsin's defense. And again, if that was a more complete team, that would have been a game. So I think this is going to be a tight slugfest. And I think Michigan can slow their offense down, but also vice versa.
Yeah, I find it hard to evaluate Georgia just given their schedule this year. I mean, they played 4 abject meatballs, and their most of the rest of their teams, like Florida, had a down year. They were 6-6. Um, Auburn was 6-6. They weren't a great team. They had some moments. Tennessee, I watched a couple times and were pretty raggedy. They were 7-5. Uh, Missouri, they played. They were 6-6. They weren't all that good. I mean, the best teams they probably played were Arkansas and Kentucky at home, and I don't think either Arkansas or Kentucky is as good a team as Michigan or anywhere close. I guess they had Clemson in the opener at Clemson. They scored 10 points. But again, Clemson wasn't a great team this year either. So it's hard to look at their schedule and say, yeah, they were just killing it, when the level of competition was pedestrian for them this year. And so it's hard for me to evaluate. But I tend to agree with Brian in that their defense looks really good, except against Alabama. And Michigan's going to have, Michigan isn't going to get out of what they do. Michigan's going to do what they do, but they're going to have to do something else in this game, because I don't think they can just run power and pin and pulls at them without that big nose guard blowing some stuff up.
Yeah, he's going to knock off a lot of pullers. I agree with you.
Yeah.
He's a problem. He's the one that scares me the most.
He's the problem. He's the problem for Michigan, in my opinion.
Their linebackers are great too. They've got some like Devin Bush speed back at the linebacker level, which Michigan has not seen this year, and which is going to take away some of the things that Michigan's been doing late in the season with Donovan Edwards, or getting Blake Corum back and having that. Like, I think that Georgia's going to be able to match our backfield for speed on the edge, which is not something that Michigan's seen before. And Alabama just took to the air and used the talent. And I'm 100% Devin Gardner on this one. Like, Michigan's going to have to throw the ball downfield to beat these guys.
Yeah, I mean, there was a play where Jamison Williams just gave a little shimmy, and that completely destroyed the safety who was trying to bracket that guy. And he wins over the top on a bracket. So does Michigan have Jamison Williams? No. But they also have the most 50-yard plays of anybody in the country this year. So if they can do that, they can win that game.
Well, yeah, I think they're going to have to be more quarterback dependent in this game for sure. But they're not going to get Bryce Young type production. At least they can't plan to. You can hope that happens, but I don't think you can plan to get 400 plus yards passing in this game. How do you achieve advantages? I don't think their linebackers match up with Donovan Edwards. Now, that in the passing game, if you can get him on the perimeter against their linebackers, I like that matchup. I like him. I like Donovan Edwards against any linebacker in the country. Let's go. Please, let's do that. I think that works. But I think more importantly in their run game, not to be a broken record, I think this is where a game where J.J. McCarthy, a little more JJ in the mix, sort of helps that run game a little more. I think this is a contest where, if his usage is, I don't know what the number is, let's just arbitrarily call it 15%. He has 15% usage. Let's up it to 25 in this game, fellas, because I think that him on the field helps your run game. It helps you sort of keep them a little more honest than if it's Cade as much as we see him in most games.
Yeah, and then we got to run a flea flicker every quarter.
which they can do. Hey, man, that's the thing about. But listen, you were laughing, but that's not ridiculous.
No,
it's not.
It is not.
At all.
Michigan State ran a flea flicker in every game they played this year, and it still kept working. So keep it going. Michigan's run,
and they have he has the ability. Like, none of these flea flickers are the same. I mean, he's running these flea flickers from different looks. They look like different plays every time. So, I mean, you can be unpredictable with the flea flicker. As I'm with you, I'm pulling out all that stuff. And with 3 weeks to prepare, yeah, man. Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the ways that they get down the field.
Well, and I think the JJ point is salient, especially with 3 weeks to prepare, right? Like, you can they had the package for Ohio State with the diamond backfield.
Mm-hmm.
And so are you going to run that against Georgia? Probably you shouldn't. Probably what you should do is you should come up with something else that they haven't seen before and see if you can get people moving the wrong direction, which is going to happen when you have someone like JJ out there. JJ McCarthy, as fast as Blake Corum.
Was a great play.
That was remarkable, wasn't it? I mean,
Corum says he's slowed up. I don't think he did.
Maybe he had
I
the
don't
flu.
think he did. I know the Iowa safety who he was out running did.
yeah, the flu. Yeah, I think Seth has a point. Corum had the flu, so he slowed up a little bit there.
That just means that the entire Ohio State team is anti-vaxxers, which we already knew. Get your flu shot. CJ Stroud, safe and effective.
Oh man, it's funny to hear him cry. Go ahead, Craig.
I was just going to say the two things that Brian. I mean, this is so right. What you guys are saying is that the fact that Michigan late in the season got Donovan Edwards involved in the pass game is made the offense just so much more dimensional, and that was just fantastic by the coaching staff the way they've done it, and the fact that they've got extra time to get him involved against Georgia in other ways perhaps is great, and it's the same for JJ. I mean, read options. The whole point of read options is it gives you an extra player on the field in the run game, and so I agree that with you, Sam, that it will probably behoove Michigan to have a little more of that in this game. So.
Yeah, I mean, unless they, want to get out of their comfort zone of who they are. I mean, if you want to run the football and have it be a consistent part of your game against this, just on paper. I know you got to see it on the field. You're going to test them, but just on paper, you need JJ McCarthy in this game. You need that element to run the football as effectively as they're going to need to, or they want to stay balanced with their offense. It's just, I mean, people are talking about how Bama did it. This is who can forecast 400 plus yards throwing from Michigan. I mean, there's nothing to suggest that that's something that you can predict will happen. You can certainly hope it will, but I'm not going into this game thinking they're going to get Bryce Young performance from the quarterback position. So how do you achieve some running sort of efficacy in this contest? To me, JJ McCarthy. So
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure Michigan needs 400 yards passing. I mean, because I'm not sure. I agree with Brian that the Georgia offense is all that dynamic, and I'm not sure that Michigan can't control that offense. So I'm not sure they'll need 400 yards passing, but they're going to need something, and because Georgia isn't going to get shut out in this game either.
Right. All right. We need to get to a break. We'll come back on the other side. More MGoBlog Roundtable when we return here on the Michigan Insider on Sports Talk 1050 WTKA. The Ticket.
All clear on the radio.
I got to tell you guys what happened in the bar before down in Indianapolis. So we're sitting in the bar with Dave Nasternak and my wife and a friend of Dave's, Larissa, and we're eating, and the guy at the next table is really loud, and he's telling this story how he keeps getting confused with this other Craig Ross. And
are you kidding
and
me?
So the guy is wearing a Purdue shirt, and it turns out he's with his niece, who is an Iowa student, and so I think, this is too weird. I'm just not, and I thought I didn't hear it right, but then Sue turns to me and says, what is he talking about? Craig Ross, what is this? And so the Larissa, I'm not saying anything. And so Larissa says, hey, this guy's named Craig Ross too. And so the guy is named Craig Ross. He's from just outside of Indianapolis. He sells. He's a wonderful man. He's a salesman, and he says this other Craig Ross keeps, getting confused, or he keeps getting their mail or emails or whatever. And I said, well, I'm not that Craig Ross. Anyway, it was just weird. But he was so happy to meet another Craig Ross who was not the Craig Ross who keeps getting confused. He keeps getting confused.
No one's confused him for a 3,000-year-old druid yet.
Yeah, no, he was
And
younger than
Googled
me.
his name and discovered the
Yeah.
things that we know about Craig Rossi.
Yeah, just a very, very weird event.
All right, I'm just pulling up some of the comments. Here's one. I think that goes without saying, Doughboy. I think that goes without saying. Yes, they have to double team Jordan Davis. I think that goes without saying. What is?
Yeah, I don't see Vastardis handling him by himself.
This is a good point too. That dude does get tired.
Yeah.
He does get tired.
Yeah, we're not a tempo team though. That's not.
Well, that's a question. I thought Iowa might run some tempo against us. They ran one play in the game, I think.
Yeah, because I asked our Iowa guy about that. I said, would they bring some tempo to the equation? He says not really in their purview. And they came out, they tried it, but it's just so far outside of their DNA.
Mm-hmm.
But when I say he gets tired, to me, it's more of a second half thing. Like, can you stay with your game plan enough to still be running the football in the second half? If you can, that dude. Yeah, he starts to bend over a little bit. The fatigue starts to set in, but you got to get there. You got to get to that point. And yes, Vastardis will need help with this dude.
Yeah,
no question.
And if he's fighting two guys, at the line, he may get more and more tired. It's hard fighting two big guys, regardless of how big you are.
Back in 1 minute, guys, on the radio. Back in 1 minute. I'm pretty sure Iowa did go up tempo. They snapped the ball with like 4 seconds left on the clock a few times. That's up tempo for Iowa, isn't
it?
I recall one play where they tried to tempo Michigan and it didn't work real well, and then they said forget it. So
yeah,
Ohio State did well with it.
Oh man,
where he say he was from, Ira? Did he have his?
Didn't have a location.
Okay, I know I saw Singapore on there at some point.
Yep. We've had some
Singapore. Yep,
we've had a Singapore.
We're huge in Singapore.
We did last week. We had 2, or maybe it was Monday for Devin. One of the last couple of times we were live, we had 2 different viewers from Singapore at the same time. All right, we're back in about 10 seconds, guys. Stand by.
I don't know who he has to politic with to get that dub, but I mean, man, that dude. It's amazing that he's as effective as he is with how much he gets held.
Yeah.
Coming back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider, Sports Talk 1050 WTKA, online at WTK.com. So it should come as no surprise, fellas, as we bring the MGoBlog Roundtable crew back on. Brian Cook, Craig Ross, Seth Fisher. They think it's a foregone conclusion in the South that they're going to win this game. I'm is that just pure Southern bias? Am I missing something about this Georgia team? But they seem convinced that Georgia is going to handle Michigan with no problem. Is that just Southern arrogance, Brian Cook?
Well, I mean, last time a team from Michigan got in the playoff, they didn't score a point, lost 37-0. So maybe it's based on that.
Okay. No, don't give Michigan any credit. It was 38-0, Brian.
Oh, 38. Sorry.
Yeah, I can't believe you
38-0.
shorted them a point.
That is a great point, Brian. Okay, now, you see that. I mean, the last time a Michigan team was in the playoff, give them credit, but has Michigan State scored a point, Ira, in the playoff?
Not in the playoffs, Sam, no.
No, Michigan's going to hope to be the second Big Ten team to ever score a point in the playoffs.
So, okay, against that backdrop, I guess it makes sense that they would be cocky arrogant, not just a little bit arrogant, but cocky arrogant. And I keep asking myself, and we're just now getting into the Georgia film. We haven't made it through every game. We have every game, but we haven't made it through all of them yet, or even one of them in full, to be frank with you. But I'm excited. I don't see what they see. I don't see this. Like Craig, like you said, I mean, I think you got to look at their opponents, and so much stock is being put into what those opponents were ranked when they played them.
Yeah.
How good are those opponents in retrospect, right? I think that's what's more important. and they haven't really beaten anyone, of a real note, Brian, that would make you think they'll be able to come in and dominate Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, so this is not a vintage SEC, right? So I'm not going to downplay the fact that Georgia and Alabama are the two most talented teams in the country and have a lot of things going for them. But like, who's the third best team in the SEC? Kentucky. Is that a vintage SEC when Kentucky is the third best team? No. So this is a situation where, yeah, they don't really have a quality win on their resume that looks good. What they did do is they did absolutely face stomp everybody they played. And that is something that, whenever you ask anyone who puts together these ranking systems, if that matters, the answer is yes. So they are the number one team in SP Plus by a significant margin. I think they're a 6-point favorite in the fancy stats, and they're a 7.5-point favorite in Vegas. They should be favored. They have a ton of talent, and Michigan is going to have a hard time winning this game, but it's going to be competitive. It's not going to be a complete blowout. It's going to be a game now, and if anyone thinks it's not going to be a game, then I have issues with that. But yeah, Georgia's good.
What do we think? Go ahead, Craig.
I just keep coming back to the last half of their season. They beat a crappy Florida team, a crappy Tennessee team, a dreadful Georgia Tech team, a bad Missouri team, a really awful Charleston Southern team. That's the end of their schedule until they play Alabama, where they get kicked around. And so, when I look at that, I said, okay, I don't care. It's like Minnesota last night in basketball. They were 7-0. They were 7-0 against the worst schedule I've ever seen a Big Ten team play. And, Michigan State took them apart, in that game last night. And so the level of competition means something. And so I look at this. Now, I'm not saying Georgia isn't good. I'm not saying they won't win. But you look at who they played. If Michigan plays Northern Illinois and Ball State and Western all year, and they win them all by 40 or 50 points, I don't care what the fancy stats say at that juncture. And so I'm just not sure. Now, maybe Missouri and Tennessee and Florida were really okay, good teams in a competitive league or playing competitive games. But if you look at those, I don't think so either. And so I just am not sure about Georgia. But it's not the Southern consciousness. It's the country consciousness. It's the gambling consortium consciousness. And the casinos are begging for money on Michigan because that line is going up. And so the public consciousness is that Georgia's, an 8.5 plus favorite. And that's a lot that's a lot of difference in these games. On the other hand, the very ill Ohio State team was also, I think, a 7.5 or 8-point favorite against Michigan. They didn't know, however, how ill that team really was. Which
Vegas took a stance on that game, right?
Yes.
We have all the money on Ohio State, and we're fine with that.
Well, except for one. Yes, that's correct. One book in particular, because the line in Vegas went to over 8 in that game, except one sports book left it right at 6. So they were begging for Ohio State money. They wanted to take a stance on this game on Michigan. So that sport book made money, and they knew what they were doing. And that's usually they want to balance the books, and that's why the line is moving around. But that wasn't true in the Ohio State game. But in any event, the public perception certainly is that this is a reasonably easy win for Georgia. That's
right. So Seth, I mean, we got a comment from D Brown here in the YouTube stream that I think our coaches are much better than UGA's. What do we think of Kirby Smart as a coach? What do we think of the matchup on the sideline and in the box?
Smart's been a good coach for a long time. I remember Smart coming up as a coordinator and people talking about that guy as a superstar. He's a fantastic recruiter, and he leans on his talent. So, I mean, Georgia has a ton of talent. They've got maybe more than Alabama if you want to like just break it down by pure 24/7 stars on the composite, right? And that's what they play to. They use the fact that they have a lot of talented guys and they're just going to beat you. James Cook, their running back, kind of come on later in the season. I know they used two of them. That guy, he's got speed. You have to stop it. So the coaching level of Kirby Smart, I've joked around about it because they keep their things simple. But simple works for them. That's what you want to do when you got that kind of talent. So, keep in mind, I rip on the SEC, as part of my shtick. But I do have a lot of respect for that team, and it's a good football team. It's not when I joke around about Kirby Smart, it's I'm making recruiting jokes or whatnot. Like that's because we're recruiting against him. When we're going to play them, and I'm trying to preview a team, let's be real. They're a good team. They're well coached.
So guys, let's assume for the sake of argument, because I know I'm saying that I'm phrasing it in that way because I know some Michigan fans get freaked out if you predict Michigan is going to win, especially this early. So let's assume for the sake of argument that Michigan beats Georgia. Is there any chance they face Cincinnati in that game, or is it Georgia? I mean, is it Bama for sure?
Yeah, I mean, Bama lost to an 8-4 Texas A&M team. They got outgained by a Florida team that was not good. They went to overtime against Auburn. This is not
should have lost to Auburn.
Should have lost to Auburn. This is not an infallible Alabama team, and I kind of feel like that line for Cincinnati is, I don't know. I don't really bet, but I would bet that they are able to keep this game relatively close. Like, this is not one of the juggernaut Alabama teams. They're a really good team, but this is not that team.
Cincinnati's a good team. People are discounting Cincinnati because they see Power 5. They're not Power 5, but if you want to look at where Cincinnati stands in recruiting and how long those guys have been on that team and how well they're coached, I mean that team would fit anywhere in the Big Ten. Like they are a better team than Michigan State by far, talent wise. That was the problem at Michigan State is Fickle's been taking some of the recruits they used to get, right? So I mean they would fit right in the Big Ten, right at the top of the Big Ten standings right now, if not number one in the Big Ten. So Cincinnati's real. And like Brian says, Alabama has not been great this year. Do you know Josh Jobe? Remember that guy that we were trying to recruit? Don Brown wanted him really bad. And then Michigan was just torching him and couldn't hit their receivers downfield against him in 2019. That guy's still their starting cornerback at Alabama. So this is not like an Alabama. They have just like every single mercenary, every single spot is going to kill you.
Yeah.
They've got some spots where you can play against those guys.
Yeah, like they had one score games against LSU, Arkansas, Auburn, A&M, which they lost, and Florida. Like that's a lot of mediocre teams to be in real games with.
Yeah. All right, yeah. So yeah, that makes the Georgia game look even better if you're from Michigan's perspective that they were able to just run roughshod all over that squad and challenge that Georgia offense to match, and they simply couldn't do it. I do want to give some time to get your reaction to all the movement that we've seen on the coaching side of things. So. Let's stay close to home here real quick and talk about the Buckeyes. Ailing though they might be, sounds like they are, still dealing with the flu symptoms over there, as you heard CJ Stroud talking about yesterday. But Ryan Day out here doing some work trying to fix that defense, and he goes and hires Oklahoma State's DC. And while they are high in the stats this year, I guess it didn't strike me that the Big 12 would be where you would go to look for a DC.
Not if you want to play Michigan, right? Because Oklahoma State runs a 3 safety system. They are really committed to playing Big 12 defense, and they're very good at playing Big 12 defense. But that probably isn't going to translate. And I mean, that's not the only thing this Knowles guy has done in his career. He was at Duke for a long time. But the thing that jumps out is like the last 2 years at Oklahoma State are really the only years in his career where he's had a defense that's like above mediocre. And he's 56, right? So like it's not a situation where it's like, oh, he figured something out and now he's really good. Like he just had a right combination of players and talent and scheme to win pretty well in the Big 12. Now, if he comes back to Ohio State, I'm sure he's going to be competent. Like, I'm sure he's going to be better than the mess that they had this year. And they're going to have a system where they have more options to go to when Michigan is running some things that exploit their tendencies. I don't think that they're going to be where they were before, but also I don't think this guy is going to wave a magic wand and just be like the killer defensive coordinator that you would really fear.
I think he'll be better than Kerry Coombs.
Yeah. Hard to do.
Otherwise, I don't know.
Waiting for that.
Right, and he'll be better than their half-assed attempt to change their defense to a too high system mid-season, right? Like they'll be better, but I don't think this guy is a miracle worker, because if he was, his career would look a lot different.
The other side of the ball has been where like the super high level meta stuff has been going on, and I don't think Ohio State looked at this hire as, here's what we got to do to beat what Michigan does. Unless like the only thing he knew about Michigan is that Josh Gaddis's thing is hashtag speed and space, because having a good defense in the Big 12 is an accomplishment. They've got some crazy offenses down there, but they're mostly spread offenses. And the defenses that have done well, Iowa State and Oklahoma State followed them. Like Brian said, they're 3 high defenses, right? Those are the 404 tight defenses, kind of thing that Army does, right? How many Big 10 teams run the kind of offenses that you use that defense against? Nebraska? I mean, yeah, Ohio State's not going to struggle with Nebraska anymore. Congratulations. But like, Michigan's not one of those teams.
I would be surprised if Knowles tried to run that in the Big 10. Like, right. He'll probably be back to his conventional stuff, and then we'll see if he brings a little bit more juice than he did at Duke. And he's going to have way more talent at Duke than he had at Duke, of course. But I think he's a competent college DC, and anyone who's competent in college DC will probably do pretty well at Ohio State.
All right, so let's talk the head jobs that were filled. Close to home here is Marcus Freeman. They decided to stay in-house. That one was filled. Meanwhile, Oklahoma goes to get Brent Venables, which seemed to me the no-brainer choice from the beginning. Sounds like it wasn't. There was a little bit of some Lanning talk over there out of Georgia as well. But what do you guys make of those two moves?
Well, if Tony Elliott does go to UVA, we're about to find out how much of a figurehead Dabo Swinney is.
Right.
Yeah. And like how much NIL leveling the playing field hurts Dabo Swinney. He's complaining a lot these days, and I enjoy it. Whenever Dabo opens his mouth, I'm like, oh, he's going to bitch about something, and it's going to be amazing. But yeah, I mean, Venables is been the best defensive coordinator in the country for a number of years. The only concern is, that's a Big 12 team. It's Oklahoma. What is the Oklahoma identity, Ben? Is he gonna maintain that? Is he gonna still have that kind of offense, or is he gonna want to like kind of button it up a little bit? That's how it would go wrong, I think. But he's obviously a very good coach.
The Freeman thing is interesting to me because Kelly, it looks like, took exactly 0 coaches with him. I mean,
one guy just left for
one guy.
One guy.
Yeah, which is a little unusual.
But it's Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly?
Well, as one,
it's like, we get to coach at Notre Dame without Brian Kelly here. Sign me up.
Yeah, I'm not going to name him, but I asked a coach once why Michigan State took D'Antonio over Kelly, and the comment was, because Brian Kelly is the worst person in the United States. So him, and him going to LSU without any of his coaches sort of seems to maybe confirm that. I thought Freeman's comment was interesting as he badmouthed Ohio State.
Yeah.
I mean, wasn't that sort of curious? I mean, he said, I'm going to Notre Dame and not LSU this time because I made this mistake before.
Yeah, he doesn't want to make the same mistake twice.
Same mistake again when he went to Ohio State out of high school, as opposed to, I guess he could have gone to Notre Dame.
He could have gone anyway.
Yeah.
He was a big time. Michigan recruited the hell out of that dude.
Yeah.
He's in the database. I think it's like the first big time coach who I think is in my like spreadsheet of old recruits.
Yeah. So, I mean, I thought that was a sort of unusual shot to take since they don't even play Ohio State very often.
I mean, I don't know. Trying to talk up the fact that you really want to be at Notre Dame is not. I mean, Notre Dame people eat it up, but like if you're Marcus Freeman, everybody already loves you. You're a 35-year-old black guy, and you got the head job at Notre Dame with no head coaching experience. They love you.
Yeah,
you don't have to like play it up. Right. So, but I think it's an interesting move for Notre Dame. I think that their recruiting is going to pop up. I think that he was a big part of Cincinnati's success before moving Notre Dame too, and I think that honestly, that was the right move. And I'm surprised that Notre Dame, of all places, made it.
Someone just said that Notre Dame plays at Ohio State the first game next year.
That's spicy meatball.
Oh, that is a spicy meatball. So thank you for that information.
I think there's no question from a recruiting perspective, they are going to have a serious uptick because Brian Kelly is just not a presence as a recruiter. I mean, I don't care who you are as a head coach, you're going against him. Be like, okay, I'm going to win that battle. If we lose, it's because it's Notre Dame or some of the other coaches, but it's not because of Brian Kelly. He will win. Marcus Freeman will win battles for them. The only thing curious about the pick is that you had Luke Fickell available. You had a guy who is already a proven head coach. So that says nothing about, the aptitude or acumen of Marcus Freeman. He could very well be the next guy. Hell, if he wasn't head coaching at Notre Dame, I think he would be the head coach somewhere else next year. Yeah. So they may have just been caught him on the incline, but it's still curious or at least interesting that they passed over Fickell. So we'll see how that works out.
I mean, yeah, so it might be a little short-sighted because if Fickell's available after the playoff, yeah, he's obviously a pretty good coach. But again, early signing period, they were looking at a recruiting class that might be going south. Like I think that they maybe had to panic a little bit, but I don't think it's a panic move. I do think that Marcus Freeman has the profile of a guy who's going to be a really good head coach.
I completely agree. I think Freeman was the right choice for Notre Dame. I think he's going to work out there. I mean, they've been a good program under Kelly. I think they'll probably even be better under Freeman.
Right. And they held together that coaching staff too. So it's like,
and they held the coaching staff together.
This program is not in any way needing a reboot. And also, like, nobody actually liked Brian Kelly. Like, is that actually going to hurt you losing him? I don't think so.
Yeah, even Notre Dame fans didn't like Brian Kelly.
Hey, Sam, Polian, the special teams coach, finally was the first assistant coach at Notre Dame to join him down there at LSU. He got one.
Greg, that was the one. So, hey, but what about this? What about Cristobal leaving Oregon for Miami?
That is crazy. That is absolutely crazy. You could not pry me out of Oregon for all the money in the world to go play in the frickin' Hard Rock, whatever that we're going to play in, 30 miles away from campus with no practice facilities in the ACC, where you haven't been anything in a million years. That dude must love Miami because that is crazy.
Maybe he thought that things were where the bloom was falling off the rose up there in Oregon. I don't know. His team did. I thought his team quit on him at the end. I really did. I mean, they got destroyed by Utah twice.
Yeah,
like after you got beat down the first time, you couldn't muster something better the second time around. I wonder if maybe some questions started to. I don't know. That is speculation.
I think you're right, Sam, but I think it's a combination of both. I think the bloom was off the rose there, and I think he just might like Miami better. Might like the weather better, the culture better. I think it's probably a combination of things. That and the fact that it didn't seem to be going great for him this last year.
How many coaches
Oregon
have
seems
they
like such
rotated
a plum
through?
job. Like, why would you want to get like it's such a great setup there? Everything there is perfect.
You're going to be playing in front of 15,000 people. You telling me I'm leaving Autzen Stadium to play in front of 15,000 people in a conference game against Wake Forest? Get out of here.
Hey, he's going home though. He's
cannot put a storyline on that. Going home it makes a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean that's the only thing that makes sense. Dude must love Miami. He must have some pupusas down there that, like, I'm literally talking about Salvadoran food. I'm not. I didn't. I like. I got like Antonio's last night, so I was thinking about it. Never mind.
So check it out. Hey, I was gonna ask you guys. This name just came up in the stream. I was gonna ask you about this anyway. There's a lot of fans. They're talking about bring Chip Kelly back. Bring Chip Kelly back. What about Joe Brady? What about going to get Joe Brady at Oregon? He obviously didn't work out for him at Carolina, but that was a hot name a few years ago.
I mean, if I'm Oregon, I'm just gonna like, hey, Joe Moorhead, this is.
I thought so too. He just said he's gonna coach the bowl game.
Well, just like, dude, if there's what is your program DNA as Oregon? We have an awesome offense. We run our quarterback. We have crazy skill position players. Joe Moorhead's the guy who I think is best positioned to make Oregon Oregon.
Can you pry him away from Akron?
Probably.
Yeah. I agree with you there. That's the right choice for Oregon.
Yeah, this sounds like that this according to this poster, I don't know, says that Miami thinks they signed Joe Brady as OC already, waiting to announce. Yeah, if someone offers him a head coaching job, he won't go to Miami. All right, so this is not talking about Joe Brady being the OC at Oregon. Somebody, if they went after him as the head coach, he would not go to Miami.
So the Joe Brady thing is like, all right, yeah, they had a really good season at LSU with Joe Burrow and those receivers. Like,
another great point. Devin made that point. He's like, man, everybody's talking about Joe Brady. He had an all-time great. He had the Heisman Trophy winner. He had Justin Jefferson. He had my man with the Bengals right now that Michigan thought they had with the receiver whose name
Jamar
is
Chase.
Jamar Chase. Yeah, man. I mean, you had an all-star cast. Not hard to call plays with those dudes. Yeah. I guess the one thing that I would say was, well, they had those guys the year before too, and they did look different when Joe Brady took out. We'll say that. But
yeah, we'll say that. But also, that was an Ed Orgeron team, right? So what kind of chaos is going on? And then you got like one normal human being who's like, I can do this. And so he looked like an all-star, but he's just really like an average dude who's not too horny to coach at LSU.
I was wondering if that sentence was going to get to the end.
All right, well, fellas, it's been another fun one. Certainly, we'll have another one to do before the holiday. We'll be able to talk recruiting class. We'll be able to talk some basketball and maybe a little more Georgia preview as we learn more about that team. So I appreciate you joining us. I want to remind all the rest of you to get on board with Brighton Ford. Go to BrightonFord.com. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD. Make it out to the lot at 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. That's where you can take advantage of the great deals, just like Devin Gardner did. He got an F-150. Maybe you're looking for something a little different, right? Maybe you want to get into that 2022 Ford Maverick XLT all-wheel drive, $228 a month, $2,000 down to $290 a month with $500 down. The 2021 Ford Bronco Sport Big Ben, $312 per month with $2,000 down to $374 per month with $500 down. Last but not least, the 2021 Ford Edge SEL, $229 a month with $2,000 down to $322 a month, $500 down for those and other great deals. Get on board with Brighton Ford by going to BrightonFord.com, 1-800-NEW-FORD. Make it out to the lot, 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. See you tomorrow.